Hello and welcome to the Somatic Movement and Mindset podcast with me, clinical somatic educator and founder of Total Somatics, Heidi Hadley. The Somatic Movement and Mindset podcast has been designed to help you gain a deeper understanding to how your mind and body work. You will learn about your amazing mind and body and why over time you can feel pain, recurring injuries and poor posture. Within this podcast, I will teach you why this doesn't have to be your future or the norm for you. Would you like to learn how to reduce pain, move freely, and gain a new lease of life? Let's get started. Hello and welcome back. Now, in today's episode, we're going to look at the relationship between self-awareness, self-regulation, and how that shows up with your breathing, your posture, and your mindset. Now, the reason for this episode today is because, again, many people have been reaching out and asking me questions about breathing. And there can be sometimes quite a lot of confusion because, to be fair, there is a lot of different breathing techniques and experts out there in the world, and they've all got fantastic benefits, and they've all got such really insightful information that we can take away with us. Sometimes, though, when there's so much information, it can cause almost a feeling of overwhelm, which again is something that we're looking at managing with our nervous system. We don't want to feel like we're bombarded with information. So today's episode is going to break all this down, and we're going to start to consider where this all sits together. So first of all, if we consider that there are lots of breathing techniques and they do have all their wonderful benefits, but there is something missing with many of them. And that is looking at your breathing and taking into consideration your emotional and mental well-being, so your overall mindset, but also your brainstem postural reflexes. So these are the stress reflexes that show up, and they're subconscious. So they just happen because it's part of our survival mechanism. Also, your sleep. What kind of quality sleep do you have? Is that being considered when we're looking at your breathing? Also, your rhythm of your breathing, is it deep? Is it fast? Is it shallow? And even things like your mannerisms. So when you're talking, when you're eating, are you eating fast? Are you talking fast? Are you talking really loud? Are you almost creating like a high functioning anxiety effect? You see, all of that imprints into your nervous system. And that's the key thing. It's your nervous system. All of this is being shown, all these symptoms are coming up from your nervous system. And so this is where they are all connected. And we're starting to look through the lens of the total somatic, or the global influence or effect that everything has. So when we look through a total somatics lens, we start to consider all these lifestyle factors, all these mannerisms, all these behavioral things, because this is what starts to bring things together. And so what we would be looking at is, if we aren't addressing our nervous system and we're just dealing with, say, the symptoms of breathing issues, then what we're just doing is putting a Band-Aid over it. So it will help. There'll be temporary relief. However, there's deeper things happening, and that's within our nervous system. And so that's why within Total Somatics, it's all about recalibrating and recuperating, refreshing and recharging our nervous system. And if you are a member within the Total Somatics membership, you'll know how important this is, because there is a standalone section within the membership that's got the heading Recalibrate. And it's very, very important for us to come back on a regular basis and notice, what are we breathing like? How is our mannerisms? Are we starting to go into more of a busy mindset again? Are we starting to overthink, overanalyze? These are all still symptoms of what's going on in our nervous system. And one of those issues that we can see is breathing. So that's why we're standing back here. Because again, if we start to look through a total somatics lens, and if you're in the membership or you've watched many of my free online events in the past, you'll know that our personality, our emotional makeup, all of this influences the physiological and the biomechanical actions that we have. And let's just consider this for a moment. So if we're finding that our breathing is getting affected, if we're finding that it's not deep enough, if it's shallow, if we take those sharp in-breaths and do these sorts of movements where we're just trying to catch our breath, or we're chatting to somebody about a subject that might be quite serious, and we find that we keep going into these tight, short breath patterns. That's a huge sort of alarm bell for us to say, let's just stop and recalibrate, see what we can do to change the state of your nervous system. Because if we don't do these self-awareness practices, what can happen, and you've probably have heard me mention this before, but I like to use this example, is have you ever seen a swan on water? So the swan is just on the water gliding. Outwardly, it looks effortless. But if you look under the water, you'll see their little feet going crazy to create that movement to glide along the water. That can happen to us when we get into a state of like high functioning anxiety, where we just push down a lot of our own issues that we've been dealing with and not starting to address them. And so what we will do is find coping mechanisms, and it is a learned behavior. So it takes time to just start to rewire our brain and change those patterns of behavior that we've developed over the years. But what can happen is that when we get anxious, when we get stressed, we go back into a similar, familiar, comfortable pattern in many cases. So we will just make ourselves busy. We will occupy every moment of the day so that we don't have to think about the issues that we need to address to actually start to change the state of our nervous system. And so what we will start to see is, to the outside world, we're smiling. It looks like we've got everything in order. But underneath, our heart is racing, our breathing has been impacted, our adrenals are just firing off, and it's increasing levels of cortisol. So it starts to increase our levels of inflammation in our body. And this is why it's really important, because we don't want to get into an area of burnout, for instance. And when that happens, that's a huge, huge alarm bell from your nervous system to say, right, you need to stop. We need to recalibrate here. And so just as an add-on for that particular section, if you are in the membership, Total Somatics membership, you will see there is a brand new section, and that is fibro, CFS, POTS, and also to do with burnout. So have a look in there, because you will see there's a wealth of information, and there's also skills and techniques to be done in a very manageable sort of time period, so that we're making sure that you're resting and recuperating your soma, but we are changing the state of your nervous system too. So there's lots of resources available for you to check out there. However, you may not be that high functioning swan analogy that I mentioned. It may be more that you have low energy, you feel quite apathetic, you kind of just want to close the door to the world and you kind of retreat more. Again, notice here that we're talking about your nervous system and how your nervous system is changing your posture. So it's a different postural characteristics we see in this instant. And that, again, like with the high functioning anxiety, is going to have a huge impact on the muscles around your rib cage, your diaphragm, and everything else in between. And so posturally, yet that changes. That impacts on your breathing too. And also there are other factors involved. So again, further workshops I've held before and I'll hold again in the future. You can always check that out. But if you want to know more, you can also get my free ebook, which I'll attach to the show notes of this episode too. So granted, there are breathing issues that people can have, and this can come about from what we would probably say now is modern symptoms from the pandemic. So for example, people are getting a lot of breathing problems from long COVID. So that is different to when we were just talking previously about breathing issues. And interestingly enough, if you are a Total Somatics member, have a look out, because in the coming months, I'm actually going to be holding a members workshop that's going to be talking specifically about breathing and in relation to long COVID. So do check that out, because that's very different to what we were talking about before. But there are some areas that will overlap, and you will see that within the workshop when that happens. So stay tuned if you're a Total Somatics member. So really, let us just notice for a moment that there are ways that we can self-regulate and we can self-assess. And this is what's really powerful, is that when you take back control of that awareness practice, instead of having a practitioner do sort of muscle release techniques, that sort of thing, to get greater depth of breathing, as wonderful as that is, we're still giving ownership to somebody else. And yet we know through a Total Somatics lens, what we're wanting to do is empower ourselves, because when we feel educated and empowered with skills and knowledge, That's really, really powerful. And that again helps to change the state of our nervous system, because we can reason and understand that these things happen, but there are ways and strategies and methods that means that we can recalibrate and we can regulate and we can change the state of your nervous system. So that's where the power lies, is in your own practice. So again, bringing ownership and bringing those skills back to you. So if you're in a situation whereby you notice your nervous system is changing state, and by extension, other factors, including your breathing, kicks in, and there's an issue with your breathing, you don't have to wait to book an appointment to see a practitioner. Instead, you have skills, you have knowledge already at your fingertips, thanks to Total Somatics, to be able to regulate your nervous system. And even if you're nowhere near a computer or your mobile device at that point, if you've had a regular practice of doing total somatic rib release, and also there's a hip and shoulder release section within the online shop, as well as in the membership, you can actually start to take some of those practical steps from what you do in your own personal private practice and take them into other settings. You can do mini pandiculations to reset the muscle tension, to increase the quality of your breathing, increase oxygen into every single tissue and every single cell in your body, and at the same time dialing down or regulating that stress response. There's so many benefits, and I really can't wait for you to start exploring and being curious with your own soma, noticing those subtle bits of information, which for many years you may have just pushed down and ignored and kept smiling to the world, coming out with expressions like, I haven't got time to be sick, I'm too busy, oh, this, and this. They're all limiting beliefs, and they're all labels that can make us put our self-care practice to one side. That's really where we should be focusing, self-care, because when we take good care of ourselves, then we've got so much more to give, not just to ourselves, but to others, and actually live a really good quality of life. So if you are a Total Somatics member, please check out all the resources. So again, rib release, you've got hip and shoulder release, and you know that on the Mindset Mindfulness page too, when you scroll down, you'll see there's lots of different audio classes to help to regulate your nervous system and change the state of your nervous system. So please do check those out. Plus there are workshops within the recordings and workshops section where we delve even deeper into a lot of those practical steps too, so you can take them into your daily activities. If you aren't a Total Somatics member at this point, please go to totalsomatics.com, click on the tab that says shop, and then you'll see that as you scroll down, there's lots of resources to help you. In particular, rib release and hip and shoulder sequence, they're really, really good, because what we're doing in relation to breathing and starting to get a change in our nervous system, we're looking at not just your breathing, we're looking at your ribs, we're looking at how your pelvis and your shoulders change structure from default stress patterns that are happening from your brainstem. And when we start to bring these movement patterns back in, it means that you can take those principles and apply them in different places in your daily activities. So it's really cool, this work, because it is so adaptable, and you have got the most incredible, powerful system. Well, I wouldn't even say system, but you've got this most incredible, powerful soma, really. All it wants to do all the time is come back to a state of balance. It wants to self-heal and care. And what we need to do is check out these tools and these techniques, and that can really accelerate our self-care, and really then we can enjoy a fantastic quality of life. So if you aren't in the membership, go to totalsomatics.com, click on the Join Now page, and you'll see at the moment that the membership is probably closed. So if it is, leave your details there on the wait list. And when we open the doors for registration again, you'll be the very first to find out when that is. But until next time, all my love and best wishes to you all. Take care. Bye. Thank you for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and also forward this on to somebody you know will benefit. To learn more about pain relief, plus how to improve your health and well-being, go to totalsomatics.com. Until next time, take care.